Okay, so imagine this, right? Cities, like as advanced as any modern city you can think of. But get this, they were around over 4,000 years ago. We're talking about the Indus Valley Civilization in this deep dive.
And here's the thing that blows my mind every time. They didn't build, massive temples or monuments, not like other ancient civilizations, you know what I mean?
It's like they were playing a different game entirely.
Exactly. They were playing 4D chess while everyone else was still figuring out checkers.
This article we're looking at, The Secrets of the Indus Valley, really dives deep into this. So we're talking about an area that's now Pakistan and northwest India. And this civilization, they were thriving back in 3300 BCE.
And while, other civilizations were all about those big, flashy pyramids and ziggurats, the Indus people, they were laser focused on their cities. Urban planning on another level.
Like practicality over extravagance, right?
Yeah.
They were thinking about quality of life, making a society that actually worked. It's kind of eerie how forward-thinking they were.
Totally. And that's where cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro come into play. We're not talking about some small villages here. No way. These were like meticulously planned urban centers, organized streets, standardized bricks, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, they really had a thing for grids, didn't they? And don't even get me started on their drainage system. Puts our modern plumbing to shame. Way ahead of their time. And they had public baths, too. With, like, actual plumbing. Come on.
Cleanliness was a huge deal for them, clearly. But the baths weren't just about hygiene, right? It points to a focus on community, on social gathering, things we still care about today,
Makes you wonder what else they were onto that we're just now starting to catch up with. But hold up. Because it wasn't just the cities where they were killing it. This article, it also talks about their incredible trade networks, too.
Oh, yeah. They were definitely not isolated. They were major players in this massive long-distance trade network that stretched all the way to Mesopotamia. Talk about business savvy.
And we're not talking about, like, trading apples and oranges here, okay? Yeah. They were dealing in the good stuff. Lapis lazuli, copper, textiles, luxury goods.
They knew what they were doing. Think about it. To set up trade routes like that over those distances, that takes serious organization, understanding of economics, the works.
It really shows how advanced and interconnected they were, which actually brings us to one of the biggest head scratchers.
Right. The fact that even with all this going on, they seem to be, well, pretty peaceful.
Yeah. Archaeologists haven't really found much evidence of warfare in the Indus Valley. It's wild when you think about it.
You've got all these other civilizations battling it out, vying for power and resources, and then there's the Indus people just vibing.
It's like they looked around at all the chaos and said, yeah, no thanks, we're good over here.
Exactly. Yeah. Makes you wonder what their secret was. Maybe they were just like naturally more egalitarian,
Right.
Could have contributed to a more peaceful society.
Yeah.
But without cracking their writing system, it's hard to say for sure.
And that brings us to what might be the biggest mystery of all. Their script. It's like finding a treasure chest, but you don't have the key. We've got all these seals and inscriptions, thousands of them.
But we can't read a single word. Imagine that, staring at these beautiful, intricate symbols and having no idea what they mean. It's mind-boggling.
Some scholars even think it might be a language isolate, like completely unrelated to any other language.
It's wild, right? It's not just about finding, like, a Rosetta Stone or something. It's like trying to decode a message from another planet. Will we ever have the tools to crack the code?
What amazing stories could be hidden in those symbols? What could they tell us about these people? It really makes you think.
It really does. We've got these incredibly advanced cities, a glimpse into what seems like a really peaceful way of life, and then this unbelievably complex script that we just can't figure out. Talk about a historical cliffhanger.
Right. And as fascinating as their rise is, their decline is just as baffling.
Yeah, because after all that, after thriving for over 1,000 years, they just vanish. Around 1900 BCE, things start to go south, and we're still trying to piece together exactly why. It's like one of history's biggest unsolved mysteries, a whole civilization just gone. Oof. And this article, it throws out a few theories, each one more interesting than the last.
Okay, so what are we talking about? What are the prime suspects in the case of the vanishing civilization? Hit me with it.
Well, first up, you've got the usual suspect in these cases. Good old climate change. There's some evidence that this whole region, it went through some major weather changes right around the time they started to decline.
So, like, Mother Nature gave them a bad beat and they just couldn't recover.
Could be. We're talking droughts, floods, the kind of stuff that would have been devastating for a civilization that was so reliant on agriculture and, having a good handle on their water. They build these amazing cities, those trade networks, everything all depending on a stable climate.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Even the most advanced societies, they're still vulnerable to the whims of nature.
Totally. It's a good reminder that understanding and adapting to our environment, well, it's not just a suggestion, it's essential. And that's something that's even more relevant today, don't you think?
Absolutely. And speaking of their environment, the article mentions something about rivers shifting course. So did their fancy water system end up backfiring on them?
It's not quite that simple, but yeah, imagine if the very thing that sustained your civilization just up and moved. They relied on these rivers for everything: irrigation, trade, you name it. If those rivers shifted, it would have been catastrophic, like pulling the rug out from under their whole society.
And of course, we can't forget about the classic, invasion scenario, barbarians at the gates, the whole bit.
Yeah, we can't rule out conflict entirely. I mean, there's no smoking gun, no battlefields littered with swords or anything like that, but it's possible, right? Maybe migrations or skirmishes with other groups. It could have destabilized the whole Indus Valley. Just because they were peaceful doesn't mean everyone else was.
Okay, so we've got climate change, ecological changes, and the possibility of some conflict thrown in there.
Right.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Right. It might not have been just one thing, It could have been this perfect storm of challenges that just wore them down over time, a slow burn rather than a sudden collapse.
It's kind of tragic when you think about it. The civilization, so advanced, so ahead of its time, and ultimately they were brought down by things they couldn't control.
It is. But here's the thing. Even though the Indus Valley Civilization, as we know it anyway, disappeared, it's not like their legacy just vanished into thin air. They might be gone, but they definitely didn't fade into obscurity.
True. This article, it actually talks about their influence on city planning, which is kind of amazing to think about. The things they were doing thousands of years ago are still inspiring us today.
It really goes to show how far ahead of their time they were. Grid systems, drainage, even just the concept of public baths, these were revolutionary ideas. And even today, we still rely on these innovations. In our own modern cities, we're still learning from them.
It blows my mind to think about it. It's like they sent a message through time, influencing how we live today.
Yeah.
And it really makes you wonder what other secrets they might have left behind. Secrets just waiting for us to uncover.
Who knows what other treasures, what other innovations are buried out there. All right.
It's humbling, really. Think about how much we still don't know about the past, especially about a civilization as advanced and as mysterious as the Indus Valley. And it's not just about, digging up the past and sticking it in a museum. It's about understanding what it means, what their story can teach us about building a better future. If they could achieve so much, imagine what we can learn from them, both from their successes and from their failures too.
Exactly. They seem to have figured out some pretty important stuff. I'm talking sustainable living, urban planning, maybe even how to just coexist peacefully. These are things we still struggle with today, right? Maybe the Indus people, they hold some of the answers.
It's really mind-blowing when you think about the Indus Valley Civilization thriving for over 1,000 years. They were so good at city planning, trade, and just living in peace. But what gets me is how they still affect us today, Who would have thought that a civilization from forever ago would have something to teach us in the 21st century?
It just shows you how clever and ahead of their time they were. Those innovations, especially the urban planning stuff, it's still inspiring us today. Grid systems, drainage, those public baths, revolutionary ideas back then, and we're still benefiting from them.
It's like they left us a guidebook for sustainable living, right? But that whole thing with their script, the fact that we still can't read it, that's what really sticks with me. Imagine a library full of stories and secrets, but we just don't speak the language. What if those symbols could tell us about their culture, what they believed in, even more about their inventions?
It's like the ultimate historical puzzle. Scholars have been trying to crack the Indus script for ages, and who knows, maybe one day we will. Just think of the stories those symbols could tell, their social structures, their government, maybe even how they understood the universe.
Man, the thought of unlocking those secrets is incredible. It makes you realize learning never really stops, does it? There's always something new to discover about our past.
Totally. And it's not just about, figuring out stuff for the sake of it. It's about connecting with history, understanding how complex it all is, and learning, learning from the people who came before us, the Indus Valley Civilization, with their whole thing about sustainability, about cities, about peace. They had a different perspective, right? And maybe, just maybe, their story has some valuable lessons for us today.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I have to say, I'm kind of in awe and definitely want to learn more. The Indus Valley Civilization, it reminds us that history isn't just dates and names in a textbook, right? It's about people, real people and their experiences, their triumphs, the things they left behind. They really made us rethink what we thought we knew about the ancient world, and they left us with a lot more questions than answers.
And isn't that the beauty of it all? The Indus Valley Civilization, it's a reminder that the search for knowledge never ends. It encourages us to keep digging, to keep asking those what-if questions, and to always be open to the lessons we can learn from the past, even the parts we don't fully understand. Because those parts, they just might teach us the most about ourselves and about the future we want to build.
So until next time, everyone, keep that curiosity burning, keep exploring, because who knows what other amazing civilizations and hidden histories are out there just waiting to be discovered.